Let's move on to Introduction to Parameters in Functions. In Python, functions are a fundamental building block that allow you to group code into reusable segments. A key feature of functions is their ability to accept input values, known as parameters. Parameters enable functions to process data dynamically, making them flexible and powerful tools in programming. This lesson will explore how to pass parameters to functions in Python, the different types of parameters, and how they can be utilized effectively. By the end of this lesson, you will understand how to define functions with parameters, call them with arguments, and appreciate their importance in creating dynamic applications. Don't worry if this feels new at first. Now we're on what are parameters. A parameter is a variable defined in a function declaration that acts as a placeholder for the values that will be passed to the function when it's called. The values you pass into these parameters are known as arguments. Here's a simple example. Walk through the function definition shown in the code example. In this function, name is a parameter. When you call the function, you pass an argument to it. I'll let you read the examples on screen rather than reading every line aloud. Let's move on to defining functions with multiple parameters. You can define functions with multiple parameters to accept more than one argument. This is useful for functions that need to process multiple pieces of data. Consider the following example. Walk through the function definition shown in the code example. Here, the function @_numbers takes two parameters, a and b. You can call this function with two numbers. The samples on screen walk through this step. Take a moment to read through them. Default parameters. Let's dig in. Python allows you to set default values for parameters. A default parameter is a parameter that assumes a default value if no argument is provided during the function call. For example, walk through the function definition shown in the code example. If you call this function without passing any arguments, see the example. On this slide, pause if you want to study the details. However, if you provide an argument, keyword arguments allow you to specify the parameters by name when calling a function. This can enhance readability and allow you to skip parameters with default values. For instance, walk through the function definition shown in the code example. You can call this function using keyword arguments. I'll let you read the examples on screen rather than reading every line aloud. In this lesson, you learned about, first, what parameters are and how they work in functions. Also, how to define functions with multiple parameters. Also, the concept of default parameters and how they can simplify function calls. Finally, keyword arguments and their advantages for clarity in function calls. Now put what you've learned into practice. First, define a function called multiply that takes two parameters and returns their product. Also, create a function called describe_pet that accepts a pet's name and type, with default values for both parameters. Also, write a function calculate_area that uses keyword arguments to calculate the area of a rectangle, allowing the user to input width and height. Finally, implement a function that accepts a variable number of arguments to find the maximum value among them.